Hey guys, welcome to another huge episode of Triggered. I hope you all had an incredible weekend, and it's awesome to be with you in studio live. So much to get into, there's a lot happening, and so much to cover. The Trump White House is showing the world what peace through strength actually looks like. We'll give you all the straight talk on Iran. And in California, I'm not making this up, Democrats are literally trying to pass the Stop Nick Shirley Act. Okay, think about it. The Stop Nick Shirley Act. Remember Nick Shirley? He's been on the show. He's the guy that discovered the fraud in Minnesota. He went on to California where he discovered all the hospice care. But they want to pass the Stop Nick Shirley Act. A young, 20-something-year-old kid that's just doing investigative journalism. They want to prevent him and prohibit him reporting certain information about immigration service providers. Even if it relates to fraud. I mean, this is complete insanity. But then again, it's just another day that ends in Y in California. But I mean, imagine that. They want to stop a journalist from doing journalism if it becomes something about illegal immigrants committing fraud in California. I mean, that is pretty classic California Democrats and basically the entire Democrat Party at this point. But that's the theme today. It's simple. When our leadership is strong, we put Americans first and life gets better. When leadership is weak, when the left gets their way, corruption spreads, enemies test us, criminals get protected, and ordinary Americans end up paying the price each and every time. So guys, before we get into the full show, make sure you're liking, sharing, subscribing so you never miss one of these major episodes. Download the Rumble app on your smart TV. That way you can watch with your family, and I promise you most of the time I will behave myself for the kids, okay? Because it's all about the kids, and they got to learn this stuff early. You're not going to get it on the mainstream media, those kinds of things. You're just not going to hear this kind of news. So make sure you're liking, sharing, subscribing, download the Rumble app, hit the little like button right now. It takes no time whatsoever. When you're done with this, at the end of it, share it with your friends if you like it. Get the word out. You guys are the front line of defense when it comes to getting this message out there. You guys got to take part in it, okay? If you missed the show here on Rumble, go over to Apple, go over to Spotify. If you get your podcast that way, check it out. If your friends get their podcast that way, make sure they check it out, subscribe, and also like and share it with their friends. For all of the top headlines that we cover here on the show, go check out my news app, MXM News, minute by minute. MXM News, where you can get the mainstream news without the mainstream bias. And of course, don't forget about our brave sponsors for having the guts to support this program. That ain't easy, folks. Okay? That ain't always easy. So make sure to check them out and, at least check out, people who are willing to, do something like this because it's a really big deal. So invest in the next generation with Y Refi and be a part of the solution for millions of Americans. With Y Refi, you're helping borrowers while investing in the future. Y Refi offers accredited investors fixed-rate returns backed by private student loans. Choose a term from 1 to 5 years. Take your monthly interest as income or reinvest it. Totally your choice. To learn more, preview the private placement memo for complete details and call 877-80-INVEST. That's 877-80-INVEST. Now, let's get into the news, guys. And we're going to start with some straight talk on Iran, right? Straight, get it? Hormuz Straits, a little pun there. Because the contrast could not be more obvious. For years, under Biden, under Obama, under really the entire foreign policy class, America was managed by people who thought sounding cautious was the same thing as being smart. Everything had to be delicate. Everything had to be multilateral. Everything had to be run through the maze of experts and committees and processes and stakeholders and all the other nonsense these people use when they're too afraid to actually act, right? If there's consensus by a bunch of people who haven't been right in 100 years, probably going to be right this time, right, guys? What did that get us? Got us nothing. It got us more instability, more threats, more enemies who assumed the United States had lost the will to act like the dominant power on Earth. When your favorite president comes back in, and suddenly the message is very different. Check out Trump on Iran.
House, when this all does end, when you are able,
we'll have a party. It would be great. Hey, we've been pushed around by Iran for 47 years, but not anymore.
Well, that's what clarity sounds like. No apologizing, no trying to manage the feelings of the Ayatollah. Just a very direct message. Take the deal or deal with the consequences. It's binary. It's very simple. That is what deterrence is. And for all the geniuses who spent years telling us that strength is provocative, weakness isn't what invites escalation, guys. That's what it is. Weakness invites escalation, okay? Strength gets us results. Weakness is what gets tested. Weakness is what gets Americans dragged into longer, messier, more expensive fights later on. And by the way, once the world sees that America is serious again, it's funny how quickly things start changing. Check this out.
That U.S. blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, in effect for nearly 2 hours now. A ship tracking firm reports 121 empty oil tankers are making their way to the United States of America. 68 of those 121 vessels are very large crude carriers capable of carrying 2 million barrels apiece. President Trump has urged countries squeezed by Iran's disruption of the Strait of Hormuz to turn to American energy supplies instead. Well, it would appear perhaps they are obliging him. They are listening to Trump. The president told Fox, quote, China can send their ships to the U.S., China can send their ships to Venezuela, while also saying that empty oil-carrying ships from many nations are all headed to the U.S. to load up. That from the President of the United States. A lot to follow today. Put that map back.
When the United States stops negotiating with itself, everybody else has to recalculate very quickly. And if you're following Polymarket, let's just say that recalculation can happen quite fast. And it works precisely because bad actors understand force a lot better than they understand academic theories about de-escalation frameworks. Which brings us to NATO. The second America actually exerts pressure, the same allies who constantly want our money, our military, our protection, our energy security, our intelligence, suddenly they all start acting like they need to hold 16 meetings before they can even clear their throats. Here's my father with a few sharp words for leadership in Spain.
No, they're not. I think they're not cooperating at all. Spain, I think they've been very bad. Very bad. Not good at all. We may cut off trade with Spain.
You guys all trade with them?
I don't know what Spain's doing. They've been very bad to NATO. They get protected. They don't want to pay their fair share. And they've been that way for many years, actually.
Remember Spain? They wouldn't let us land on the NATO runways there. Some of these countries wouldn't even let us use their airspace to fly over, right? But then when, big bad Russia may be a threat to them thousands of miles away, they want our money, lots of it, hundreds of billions of dollars. Those are our allies. They want us to underwrite the entire alliance structure. They want us to bail them out whenever things get serious. They want us to protect sea lanes. They want us to deter enemies, to subsidize their weakness and absorb the political heat. But when America takes action against a real threat, suddenly they're not available, guys. Nobody's home. It's amazing how that happens. They just, we didn't know there was something going on in the Middle East, really? We'll join up when it's all over. We'll join up after you win. We'll do the victory lap with you. We're just not going to take part in, the war. Suddenly, all of a sudden, guys, they're concerned. Suddenly, they need more time, Not because alliances are bad, but because an alliance that only really functions when America does everything is not actually an alliance. It's dependency. It's freeloading. It's basically the Democrat theory of everything, right? Their voters aren't people doing things. Their voters are people that are dependents on government because, if you're a dependent, they're going to give you free stuff. They're going to keep voting for you, Sound familiar? It is rich countries outsourcing their courage to the United States, then acting offended when we point it out. That's all they're doing. And the whole foreign policy blob hates when Trump says that because he exposes the scam in one sentence. America pays. America fights. America then gets criticized. Everyone else, free rides, right? They get the free ride each and every time. And then when Trump fixes all of it, they call him, dangerous and reckless. No, guys. What's dangerous is letting cowards and bureaucrats define American strength for 20 years. Now, speaking of scams, let's make sure we keep talking about Act Blue, right? The big Democrat fundraising apparatus, the one that seems to always outraise the Republicans 5-1. And it seems over the last few months we've uncovered exactly why that is, because it's not legitimate. It was never legitimate. This one is actually pretty brutal. And it's brutal because it confirms exactly what conservatives have been saying for years. The people who spent the last decade screaming about election integrity and foreign interference and Russia, 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 you name it, may have had pretty serious foreign money problems sitting inside their own fundraising apparatus. And this is not some fringe story anymore, guys. Now, for a quick refresher, as we told you a few weeks ago, the New York Times itself reported that Act Blue's own lawyers warned that the platform, that, it may have misled Congress. Just, little white lies about the safeguards it used to prevent foreign donations. Their own lawyers warning that there could be criminal exposure here. Their own lawyers. That tells you right away that this was not some harmless little compliance issue. That tells you people inside that organization knew there was a real problem. And they kept going anyway, because of course they did. That is the Democrat model now. Moral outrage in public, total corruption in private. And the deeper point here is not really just about Act Blue. It's that the entire Democrat machine always seems to operate this way. They accuse you of exactly what they're doing every single time, right? Just like Swalwell with the women. Oh, yeah, you believe all women. Oh, all of a sudden, not so much. They're not worried about foreign money if they can use it. They're not worried about election integrity if the loopholes benefit them. They're not worried about democracy if the system is tilted in their favor and can exercise their will with reckless abandon. They are worried about getting caught. That is the distinction, okay? They're not worried about all of these things. They're only worried about getting caught because they want to keep perpetuating that. It's why they've managed to keep as much power as they've had for so long. It's why they've raised as much money as they've had. And now, House Republicans say Act Blue is deliberately withholding evidence to hinder their investigation. The more sunlight on this, the more you start to understand why Democrats panic every time someone proposes even the most basic election protections, right? Why is, voter ID so popular with Americans, and yet Democrats don't want to do it? They want to make sure we don't do that. It's Jim Crow 2.0, all the usual bullshit, right? All the usual excuses. Why do they hate verification? Why do they hate stronger safeguards? Why do they hate scrutiny? Because scrutiny is the enemy of fraud. And on that note, take a look at this. The people who claim to be defending democracy are always the first people to freak out when you ask for the simplest possible guardrails. We're seeing it with the Save America Act right now. Again, all of this is common sense. Verify who's donating. Make sure foreign nationals are not funneling money illegally into the system. Make sure fake names and straw donors are not propping up a political machine. That seems like basic stuff, guys. That's not that complicated. That in and of itself is actually defending democracy. Okay? Because democracy is about fairness. Okay? Our republic is dependent on that. But when fairness works against the Democrats, all of a sudden they're not into fairness. They're not into democracy. They're into power. How is any honest person against that? Unless, again, the power was always about power. That was always the point. Power is everything in DC. Power is power, and that's the point. And get this, Democrats in California are now trying to pass what's being called the Stop Nick Shirley Act. Can't even make... Think about this. They're literally trying... California's trying to pass an act to stop like a 20-year-old journalist from doing journalism. They want to stop Nick Shirley from cracking down on fraud. I mean, they literally are trying to pass a law to crack down on anti-fraud journalism. I'm not making this up. The bill would prohibit journalists or anyone from posting certain identifying information about providers of immigration-related services, even if it's related to fraud. California Democrats are literally taking the side of the fraudsters. They want to protect the fraudsters, not the journalists that actually expose it. You know, you're talking about billions of dollars here. You're talking about draining American taxpayer dollars, subsidizing criminals, and they want to make sure that no one does that. So, Nick went to Sacramento and asked a couple of lawmakers what's going on. Check this out.
AB 2624, why would you sign off on that? It's a direct violation of the First Amendment, and it makes it harder for people to expose fraud here.
We have Ledge Council. They check the constitutionality of all our bills as we're writing them. I work on fraud issues. You'd know that if you look at some of the work I did on the budget subcommittee.
Amazing. So, Mia Bonta, her husband's the Attorney General of the Attorney General of California, and it was only until I exposed fraud that they actually cracked down on the fraud and made some arrests here, especially with the hospices. And do you know that if this bill were to pass, it'd make it illegal for someone to go after fraud, especially if it's based off of immigrants, for instance, the Armenians in California?
No, I think that that's a misinterpretation of the bill, but I'm happy to talk with you more about it. And
Don't you
fraud
worry.
and investigations into fraud are something that's been happening for a very long time. The Attorney General handles those cases. This is an ongoing issue.
It's a little weird that the wife of the Attorney General, Mia Bonta, is now pushing this bill that literally goes against the First Amendment.
No, I actually don't. I don't think that this bill violates the First Amendment. I mean,
Really?
that's the whole purpose. We have Ledge Council and Ledge attorneys that talk with us about this. Constitutionality is really important to the work.
So your bill criminalizes publication of images recorded in public. Do you believe the government has the right to punish journalists for filming in public space?
No, I think that is a complete misinterpretation of actually the piece of legislation.
That is not. That's literally what happened. Speaker Rivas, how are you doing? What do you think about the Stop Nick Shirley Act, AB 2624?
I don't know anything about it.
And do you think there's any conflict of interest there with Mia Bonta and her husband being the AG? That just shows you everything you need to know. These people won't even answer the question.
Now notice how that lawmaker just brushes off concerns about the First Amendment. I mean, you know, freedom of speech. He should be able to say what he wants, especially when it comes to fraud, but in general, regardless, right? We don't have to like what anyone's saying, but you can't just stop them from doing it. But they just brush it off. Doesn't matter. Because it is not just one scandal. It's a pattern. It's a culture. Again, guys, it's a machine. They want to stop him looking into any of these things because once you realize that it's happening in Medicaid, it's probably happening in Medicare. Once you realize it's happening in Medicare, it's probably happening across the entire board. Anything, not just health, anything. And that same machine protects corruption, protects institutional failure, and protects criminals too. Which brings me to the next story. Because once again, the cost of rogue left-wing sanctuary policies is really, unfortunately, measured in actual human lives. And if you want a case that shows exactly what these policies produce, just look at your screen. This story is horrifying. A DHS employee was just murdered in cold blood by a foreigner with prior convictions, who was naturalized under Joe Biden and his administration. A DHS employee murdered, 2 other victims attacked, and authorities say the suspect was a naturalized citizen from the UK. Guys, you already know the script from the left after a story like this. Don't ask questions. Don't connect the policy failures to the outcome. Don't notice the system that enabled it. Pretend as though it never happened. Sorry, guys. No. That game is over. If your politics only work when the public is forbidden from noticing the consequences, then your politics are broken. Your policies suck. Because this is what progressive governance actually looks like in practice. Endless loopholes, no accountability, no urgency, no willingness to enforce the law. And then, when innocent people die, they act offended that anyone would point back to the policies that made it possible. You do not get to separate the blood from the far left bloated bureaucracy. It doesn't work that way. They create these systems. If you create a system that treats enforcement like cruelty, if you create a culture that treats boundaries like oppression, if you keep protecting the people who should have never been protected in the first place, then these outcomes are entirely on you. That is the truth. Because order is not oppression. A functioning country has to protect its own people. That's how it works. That's literally the basic tenet of civilization. That should not be controversial. But inside the modern Democrat political machine, it basically is. Now, speaking of people who don't know what's truth from reality, you have got to see what happened this weekend at the Michigan Democratic Convention. For years, and every day since, the left has told you that asking for an ID to vote is racist. Remember, it's Jim Crow 2.0. It's some kind of white supremacist plot to keep minorities out of the ballot box. You know, they can't get ID. They're not smart enough to do that. They've said these things. Voter ID was a tool of oppression. Asking for a driver's license was basically the Klan, guys. I mean, you're basically the KKK. Okay, fine. So what happens when the Michigan Democrats run their own convention? Right? All Democrats. In Michigan, pretty radical Democrats. And they decide to actually, take the advice of their activist wing and not check IDs at the door when delegates show up to register. Well, take a look at how one of their own handled it.
PM at the Michigan Democratic Convention primary, where we've been waiting to find out if our first set of votes have even been tabulated and counted, and if we need to vote a second time, because this is also kind of like rank my vote out here, even though a lot of the candidates don't even want that. I just found out that about 10-20 minutes ago, we just got the last vote in. Voting began at 5:30 when it was supposed to begin at 3 p.m. What's wild is many people have been here since 7 a.m. I arrived at 1 p.m. and I'm tapping out, even though I would like to make sure I can continue voting for my Secretary of State choice and my Attorney General choice. This is the most land-owning 1800s white man bullshit privilege I've seen in democracy power. And apparently Curtis Hurdle, the chair of the Democratic Party here in Michigan, ran on changing this, ran on moving the primary speed more accessible to possibly having satellite locations or mail-in voting or even online voting, because we voted mobilely. This whole fucking thing. We showed up, we had to be in person. And here's another thing. They didn't even ask for my ID. I did not even have my state ID asked for when I was registering as a delegate to vote. So why in the fuck am I spending my entire evening in Detroit, my entire Sunday in Detroit, when I could have been voting from home or in a satellite location or with mail-in voting or online or ranked by choice? What the hell is going on with Michigan democracy? Because, who wants to spend 12 plus hours in a convention center just to make their voice heard? This shit is fucked.
Well, sorry for the language in that one, but I think we have to point out, this person said, and I quote, "They didn't even ask for my ID." Let that sink in for 1 second. She is at a Democratic Party convention in a room full of Democratic delegates, complaining that her own party did not ask her for identification. I don't know, guys. Seems like you don't want anyone else to have identification, but, you You really want to use it when it matters. Huh. I wonder why Republicans want identification checked. I wonder why we want the basics to be checked, to verify that people are actually citizens. I mean, think about this. This is the self-own of the year. This is the moment the entire voter ID lie collapses on live video. Because apparently, when it's your convention, when it's your delegate credentials, when it's your seat at the table, suddenly ID is not Jim Crow 2.0. Suddenly ID is not racist. Suddenly ID is the bare minimum for a functioning system. Huh? Who's been saying that all along? Oh, Republicans. Who wants to tell her? Who wants to tell her that thing she's screaming about? That's called voter integrity. That's the thing normal Americans have been asking for at every polling place in this country for like the last 20 years. And every time we do, the same people she votes for call us bigots. You can't make it up. They do this for us. And yet we still can't get it through. And there's plenty of weak Republicans that won't push it either. And speaking of masks slipping, let's talk about something you may not have heard about. Something the regime media is absolutely not going to cover, certainly not in a way that it gets deserved. FTC Chairman Andrew Ferguson announced that his agency is cracking down on the censorship cartel, the collusion between advertisers, platforms, and left-wing smear artists that has been basically choking conservative speech on the internet for decades now, certainly years, certainly since we got into politics, saying, quote, "When that collusion also prevents the spread of ideas they don't like, it undermines our basic rights as citizens to speak and be heard." Today, the FTC took monumental steps to promote economic competition and stop collusive censorship. The issue is not just that, one company moderated content on its own. The issue is whether a network of powerful institutions effectively work together to punish platforms, shows, outlets, or creators unless they, suppressed certain political views, perhaps. I wonder if we've seen this play out in real life. I've been talking about it for a decade. A cartel of corporations got together and decided which ideas Americans were allowed to hear, and the federal government is now going to do something about it. Think about what that actually means for a second, guys. For years, we watched it happen in real time. Conservative accounts throttled, conservative advertisers blacklisted, conservative journalists demonetized. Just regular people posting got just totally canceled. Entire news stories just gone. The Hunter Biden laptop, the lab leak, the vaccine side effects, the election integrity conversation, scrubbed, flagged, buried, banned, censored, canceled. But now, there's actual consequences for it. I'd love to make some of those consequences retroactive so we could all go after these guys because we all know people who it happened to. I know I'm one of them. And by the way, while the left is obsessed with finding new ways to game the system, the Trump administration is doing something normal countries used to do. Trying to build things again and actually put more money in the pockets of working people. No tax on overtime, more and more made in America, less red tape, less bureaucracy, less regulation. In other words, make it easier to hire, easier to expand, easier to finance, easier to build, and more profitable to build here than to ship jobs to China. And what happens? I don't know, guys. Factories actually start adding shifts. Wow, it's amazing how that works. When you don't make it impossible to do something, that something actually can happen. Check this out on the SBA reforms.
Conditions and labor trends were also part of a recent exchange at the White House. The administration was asked about hiring, production, and overall work. The Small Business Administrator, Kelly Loeffler, says some manufacturers are seeing increased activity, pointing to factories expanding shifts as production picks up.
A great example are the factories that we see coming back thanks to 100% Made in America expensing. Coosa Steel is a great example in Rome, Georgia, where the owner was down to running one shift 1 day a week. He's up to 2 or 3 shifts 5 or 6 days a week. So thanks to reindustrializing this nation through our small manufacturing base, which most manufacturers in America meet the small business definition, 98% of them, we're seeing more shifts taking place, more opportunities for overtime, and the more willingness of workers to take on overtime shifts, because in the past they were penalized by the tax system for taking on overtime.
Loeffler also says overall small business optimism has remained above its long-term average under the current administration.
Imagine that. You mean if you stop punishing production, stop suffocating small businesses, and actually reward people for making things in the United States, American industry might come back to life. Huh? Who would have thought it? What a concept. It's amazing. Amazing it hasn't been done before, but, amazing nonetheless. This is what an American first economy is supposed to look like, guys. Not lectures, not DEI and ESG scorecards, not climate paperwork stacked to the ceiling. Actual policy that says build it here, hire here, grow here, win here. That's it. And by the way, at the center of all of this is what actually looks like when a government prioritizes, wait for it, Americans. Wow. Amazing. And when they say the law is not optional, okay? Because the Department of Transportation is yanking $73 million from New York over commercial driver license getting vetting failures and basically allowing illegals to take over the system and make roads less safe. And the message from the administration is brutally simple. We gave you 4 months to comply. You refused. Now the money goes away. And if you keep refusing, you could lose the ability to issue CDLs altogether. Okay, those are commercial driver's licenses. If you keep issuing them to people who can't read, like the signs on a road, you keep giving it to people who may not even have driver's licenses or shouldn't get CDLs to begin with, maybe you don't get your federal funding anymore. Wow. Accountability. Consequences. Amazing. Think about how insane that is. We're talking about commercial driver's licenses. The people operating massive vehicles, 18-wheelers and stuff, on public roads. And New York still treated basic legal compliance like it was some sort of, maybe like suggestion. We're not going to really listen to that. This is the same blue state disease you see everywhere. Ideology first, the law second, if ever. Public safety somewhere off in the distance. And the answer is not another warning letter, not another blue ribbon commission, not another excuse. It's consequences. Check this out.
We audited New York, in 53% of the licenses, commercial driver's licenses issued to foreigners, 53% were issued illegally, contrary to our rules. And so usually we give states 30 days to come into compliance. We gave New York 4 months to say, hey, what we want you to do is just go back and audit all of these licenses that you've given, and if you've given them contrary to the rules, we'll revoke that license. And in essence, New York said, go pound sand, DOT. And so this is the first step. We said, okay, we're going to pull the $73 million. There's more money that we can pull as we get to the out months. But in the very end, if New York doesn't comply, we can pull their ability to issue commercial driver's licenses. And it's not a New York issue. As you know, commercial drivers don't stay in New York. They drive across the country. And so you have a state with really good rules, say Oklahoma. These drivers from New York drive truck through Oklahoma and every other state. And so they endanger the families that are going to church like on a Sunday morning like today, or they're going to Walmart to shop. We've seen way too many videos of commercial drivers who can't read road signs, like you mentioned, But also, we found a whole slew of fake schools. It's kind of like the Learning Center in Minnesota, where you pay them, $1,000 to the school. There's no curriculum. There's no driver. They get a certificate that they passed the school when they don't know anything about commercial driving. By the way, these are 80,000-pound big rigs. And then they get on American roads and they hurt the American people. There are the countless Americans that want to drive truck. These are great jobs. They support families. And instead, we have illegals or foreigners getting these jobs, and they're hurting the American people. We are not going to tolerate it at DOT. President Trump said no more, and so we're following his lead to do all we can to get states to comply. One other point, Peter. I wish I had the power and control to take those licenses away in the federal government. I don't. We give this right to the states. So I have to work with the states and as a head of DOT federally to get them to comply with us. But I don't have that control. We've given it to governors and state DOTs, and these are the bad decisions that some of them are making.
Guys, because for all the garbage we put up with in politics, we're now seeing example after example of how government can do something very simple and very decent and very direct on issue after issue. For example, for years, veterans dealing with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and traumatic brain injuries have been told to wait. Wait for the system. Wait for another commission. And that is exactly how Washington usually handles hard problems. Just wait. Kick the can down the road. Maybe after I retire, someone else can deal with the problem. But now we're actually seeing some real progress. Here's Joe Rogan in the White House over the weekend breaking some really big news.
I want to say that I'm here because of the man to my left. Brian Hubbard and former Texas Governor Rick Perry came on my podcast. They told me how impactful this medicine is. And having that conversation with them, millions of people got a chance to hear their story, hear the stories of all the different people that have had life-changing experiences from it. And I want Brian to be able to speak about this.
Good. Brian, please.
Thank you, sir.
I heard that show. You have no trouble speaking. He's got no trouble speaking.
I want to assure you that my presence here is the most concrete affirmation that God.
So just look at the contrast one more time. Strength abroad, pressure on corruption, enforcement at home, slashing red tape, and putting Americans first. And actual urgency for the people who served this great nation. That's leadership. That's what competence looks like. And trust me, Americans notice the difference. Trust is earned. Competence earns trust. Urgency earns trust. Results earn trust. Now, for all of you watching, let's tie this all together. Whether we're talking about Iran, whether we're talking about Act Blue or sanctuary cities, whatever the topic is, the underlying issue is the same. We need leaders willing to protect American citizens first. We need a government that believes strength deters evil. We must have the courage to enforce our laws, to expose corruption, and to stop pretending that chaos is compassion. Because the left's model is clear now. Protect the machine, protect the bureaucracy, protect the loopholes, and protect the narrative, ultimately. But what Team Trump is showing right now is something very different. Strength versus weakness, citizens versus criminals, truth versus propaganda, and results versus excuses. That is the contrast. That is the choice. And once you see that clearly, it becomes pretty obvious why the regime media is in absolute full panic mode. Because, when leadership actually works, their entire worldview falls apart. And it's why we have to keep getting this message out, keep staying on the offense, and keep being unafraid. Okay? So with that, guys, I think, let's take some questions from the live chat. Okay? I apologize. It's hard to do the monologue with the questions going. So if you have some stuff, I'll give you guys all a second. Get involved, get in there. I may scroll on my phone and try to find some other good ones in here. Let's see. Comfort and joy. Keep being triggered. Don't worry, I'm always triggered. After 10 years of this crap, I don't even have a choice. We got to get after it. Drew, I'm going to have you guys look at it. If you see any good questions as well, let me know, because sometimes the chat goes a little fast. The Lion King. I live in upstate New York where people are normal. New York City and other cities are effed. I agree, and it's a shame because, like, listen, I'm from New York my whole life. I lived there until like 6 years ago, whatever it was. I came down to Florida as a political refugee from the People's Republic of New York. But like, it's funny when I go upstate, when I go to these places that I lived my whole life. I mean, people there are normal, but they're just outvoted by all of the insanity in the cities. So you have plenty of conservative people upstate New York that would love to have some common sense in place, but it doesn't seem to work that way because they're dominated by the big cities where, again, the handouts go a long way. Couple of questions about hunting. What's the latest? Let's see. Still doing a lot with Field Ethos. That's sort of my outdoor brand. So, check that out at fieldethos.com. Sort of high-end print publication. I have not been doing a lot. Just, some local quail hunting and a little bit of shooting. But I've been on the road a lot for work. I've been, in the process, getting ready to get married. So dealing with all of that kind of stuff. So we'll talk to you guys about that soon. Although we're not really talking about it. Just kind of keep it small and private. But that's been taking some time. Just kind of enjoying ourselves before all of that insanity. So I have not gotten out that much. Let's see. I haven't really done a big one really since like the fall. So, I think I talked about, the archery moose hunt I did earlier this year, the archery, brown bear hunt I did. I went to Africa, bow hunting as well. And then, some local stuff, but not much since the new year. It's just been a little bit too crazy. Normally I get a little bit in, still January and even early February. Did some turkey hunting, shot a great turkey with a bow. Last week and a couple weeks ago, I shot an Osceola down in Florida, so that was cool. But, just a little bit of the local stuff. Took the kids fishing yesterday on Sunday. We went out, just, caught some bonita and stuff like that, so that was cool. But no big trips. But if I get a big trip planned, I'll let you know. If you want, would you ever want me to do an entire show like they're videoing it from there? I think I got a couple this summer later on that I'm going to go to. Won't talk about details or word yet because it's just, these days, probably don't want to give too many people information about where I'm going to be. It's kind of a crazy world if you haven't noticed. But we'll have some good ones. So maybe I'll do it and maybe I'll film when I'm there and then we'll do a show about it on the way back. Maybe we'll do a dedicated show about that. You're a Trump, you do nothing small. No, we do plenty of things that are small too. You can't just focus on the big stuff. You got to get into the details. I want to see more cannon shooting. Yeah, up at my farm in Pennsylvania, we have like a bowling ball mortar. It's basically an oxyacetylene tank that we sawed off the end and drilled a hole in the bottom. And, if you angle that right and fill it with, it's called like a spray paint can, like a cap full from a spray paint cap of black powder. You could shoot a bowling ball really, really, really far. Just hope it doesn't blow up in your face. But when you shoot a heavy bowling ball, man, 2,000 yards, it's pretty amazing and pretty fun. So may have to get that going. That's usually a good 4th of July celebration. So maybe I'll do some of that. Let's see. Do you practice shooting, Yaholo? I practice shooting a lot. I shoot all the time. I mean, pretty much any weekend if I'm going up to my, my farm or anything like that, I'm always shooting or, practicing, whether it's handguns or long guns or, sporting clays with a shotgun. So I like all the disciplines. So yeah, I do quite a bit of that. And that's always a lot of fun. So yeah, I haven't done many big hunting trips just because it's been too hectic, but I can get up to my farm relatively quickly from here. So we spend a lot of weekends out there. And so if I'm up there, I'm definitely always shooting. Let's see. I mean, these comments, like, will you stand against anti-whiteism? I'm like every other comment. I mean, guys, like, I'm anti any kind of hate of all of these things. And yeah, definitely, if you're a white man these days, it's been brutal. We're trying to erase all of that bullshit that's been going on for too long. But like, I get it. Like, you can sort of hear when I talk about these things, we just want fairness across the board for everyone. And we don't want anyone to be segregated against. And we certainly don't want people promoted because they check a couple bullshit, check boxes. And, you get to be an admiral in the Navy. As long as you're trans, you don't have to be qualified or know how to drive a ship or anything like that. But, if you check a couple boxes, you're good. I feel like I talk about this all the time, but it doesn't have to be every other question in the chat. Okay, so we covered that. So I'm not going to cover it in this one anymore. So you guys can hopefully, let that go. A cannon that shoots bowling balls. Yeah. A trigger tour for midterms. We could do something like that. We could definitely do something like that. It's a lot to put together. But I've thought about doing it with a couple of those groups. I've spoken for other people who've done similar tours, and I've gone on stage and done that. So, is that something you guys would want if we came to, a bunch of cities around the country? Because that has been on the table. People have offered it to me. I mean, if it makes sense and we can cover kind of the right areas and get all these things in there, could be good. So yeah, I've definitely been looking at it. Just trying to commit the time to it is also, a little bit different. Thank you, Don. I get tired of seeing it all the time. I guess, I assume that's about the last comment I made. So, I get that, and it's definitely been brutal. Trust me. I think about it with, my sons with my last name and, being, white guys. I get it. That's not easy. Certainly not anymore, or as of late, but I think we're trying to bring that around and try to create fairness. Certainly you saw a lot of that in the military, and I think Pete Hegseth and others there, are getting rid of all of that and just trying to have a meritocracy where, people get promoted because they actually deserve to get promoted because they're better at something than someone else, not because, they're also gay or also queer or whatever the hell else, whatever the things that, made you above, the law, that made you, just free from any kind of reproach. You could just do whatever you wanted. So we get that. And obviously trying to do something about it. It just can't be like every question and every topic of, all day. We got to just restore some common sense and just create a meritocracy. That's what we're trying to do each and every day. Let's see. Let's see. What will you do for the World Cup in 2026? That's a good question. I don't really know yet. Gianni, who heads FIFA, has become a good friend of mine. He seems to, always be at all the right conferences, all over the world that I speak at from a business standpoint. He does a great job running that. So I know there's been a couple things that I've been invited to. So I'm sure I'll definitely end up at some of the games. My kids, frankly, are they're much bigger sports fans than me. I'm always like, I think sports is great. I love playing them. I don't necessarily always watch too much of it. I rather sort of, in whatever free time I have, which is not often that much these days, I'd rather be out hunting, fishing, shooting, whatever it may be. But my kids love sports. Like a couple of my kids are just like savants when it comes to stats and all these things. It's crazy. I don't even know where they get it. They just, they love that stuff. So I'm sure they'll be really into it. So that could be a kind of a fun one for them. So I'll definitely try to get to some of the stuff, maybe the local games here, or maybe New York, go back up there. So that'll be fun. Sewing Patriot 98, thank you for the entire Trump family for never giving up on America, despite that all you've been through. Thank you and good night. I appreciate that, Sewing Patriot 98. Really appreciate it. That means a lot. Yeah, listen, we've been very blessed, but we also have dealt with an undue amount of crap. So I think it was Comfort and Joy asked about 4th of July. Will I be attending the stuff at the White House or in D.C.? I would not miss that for my life. That's going to be a big one. That's going to be awesome. Obviously, also, going to the UFC on, I guess that's the 14th of June. Definitely try to go to D.C. for that because I think that'll be really cool. We were at UFC Miami last weekend. That was a lot of fun. So, whenever I get a chance to go to the UFC fights, I always go. I think on the White House lawn, that'll be even cooler. So appreciate it. Ava Poppy 2021. I want to sleep with you. Thank you, Ava. I appreciate that. I'm spoken for, but it's always nice to be loved, I guess. I love the UFC, but the tickets are overpriced. Spartan Sendikar. I don't even. Listen. I'm sure they're not cheap, you know, but I think there's also a component of it, you know, being on the White House lawn. I mean, it's, you know, it's a different kind of show. It's not something you can do every day, and it's honestly, it's probably something that may never happen again. So I get that. Obviously, that's, you know, UFC's handling all of that. They're taking care of all of the expense and whatever it may be. So that's theirs to do. You know, it's unlike the narrative that's out there. Oh, you know, the American taxpayer is paying for it. No, they're not. You know, Dana's doing all of that. So I'll leave that up to them. Yeah, anything at the White House is fabulous. Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Let's see. Anything else good? We were just at the White House on April 1st. It was great. Love the fight photo. Yeah, when they put up the new pictures, it's pretty cool. You know, the sort of real-time stuff of, you know, the day in the life all over the White House. They have these big pictures like that of whatever my dad did that week, and they just change about every week. It's pretty good. Your son's dying to go. Sounds great. I hope he can get in there. That'd be cool. Ava didn't mean to say that to you. I don't know. She typed it out. It's not like it was a Freudian slip. You say like the wrong word. I mean, she typed it out and hit send. You know, she probably meant it, but you know, like I said, I appreciate it. You know, may have to put you and Bettina on the fight card for a UFC. Could be kind of funny. I'll get in a lot of trouble for having even said that. I get to sleep on the couch tonight, but you know, we'll see. Have you ever considered inviting Jason Cohn on as a guest? I don't know who that is, so I guess not, because I don't know who it is. Who is that? Okay, because like now everyone's asking that same question, so I don't know if it's like trolls or whatever, but yeah, I don't know who it is, so probably not, but you know. Let's see. We'll see aliens before we see any DC arrests. You know, I'm hoping, you know, I'm hoping we'll get some of those. You know, I don't know enough about it. Maybe we gotta have Cash on and ask about that or whatever it may be. Drew, why don't we try to set that up again? It's been a little while. You know, again, you know, unfortunately, unlike the Democrats, we actually have to follow a process and play by the rules. They don't do that. They get pushed. Everything gets pushed through and everything like that. So it's a little different, and so we got to do it right. If otherwise, it won't stick. So hopefully they get it. They get it done. Bring on Roger Stone. We could do that. I've known Roger for a long time. I mean, it's a wild band, but that could actually be fun. Let's see. When can we hear more about the Save America Act? 1010 Lihu. We did, guys. I've done entire shows on the Save America Act. We had Mike Lee on, Senator Mike Lee from Utah, who's been one of the pioneers in the U.S. Senate, you know, championing the Save America Act. If you go back, what is it, like 2-3 weeks ago? I mean, he was literally on the show. We did an entire show on it. I interviewed him about it, all of the details, all of the things that make so much sense. So just, you know, go into the Rumble scroll if you want to learn about the Save America Act. You know, he's the guy leading the charge in the United States Senate for that. Oh yeah, we had Rick Scott also talking about that, senator from Florida, former governor of Florida, talking about that one as well. So there's literally 2 entire shows dedicated to the Save America Act. Obviously, guys, that's for those of you who don't know, that's the thing that would require you to be an American citizen to vote, that you have to prove that you're an American citizen to register to vote and then have like legitimate ID to be able to vote. Nothing radical, not Jim Crow 2.0. You know, that's easy stuff. But you know, that's go back and check it out. There's literally 2 entire shows on just that, all within probably the last month or so. So go scroll and Rumble, and you can see it all, learn more. And if there's other questions you have, you know, hit me up next time we do one of these, and you know, perhaps we can address it. Have you ever tried mushrooms or psychedelics? You know, I actually have had a lot of people, you know, tell me that I should be trying some of these things. It's not really my thing. You know, contrary to internet lore, drugs isn't really my thing. I've heard great things from like a lot of my veteran friends and, people with, PTSD and all these things. Like they swear by it. So, I'm definitely not against it. It hasn't necessarily been for me. Again, contrary to internet lore, I'm not a big drug guy. I think, if I was, they try to make me, he's like Hunter, he's always high on cocaine. It's like, no, I'm pretty energetic. I guess no one's ever accused me of being low energy. But yeah, no, that's never been my thing. Because I promise you, if it was my thing, I don't do anything half-assed. And if it was my thing, I can assure you, you'd probably, I don't know, see pictures or video or something. Because, when you're doing those things, you don't usually make great decisions, I imagine. And I imagine of all the people who probably hate my guts in this world, someone would have probably got that picture by now. Strangely enough, you don't ever see that. They saw me putting a Zyn once, or like adjusting one that had like slipped out of my mouth when I was on TV once, and they're like, he's putting coke on his gums. I'm like, I'm literally adjusting like a Zyn or an Out pouch or whatever the hell I had in my mouth at the time. I do that, but I don't. Yeah, I think people would probably know, but it's not going to stop them. Never go full Hunter or half Hunter for that matter. Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, like I said, I know, the internet's going to internet. They're going to do those things. Honestly, it's not even really worth addressing. But yeah, just it's never really been my thing. But I have nothing against it, man. If it works for those people, if people want to try it, I'm, sort of libertarian on a lot of those things. Like, try it and, if it works for you, especially if you have like cause, you have some sort of trauma that you got to deal with. I've heard incredible things from a lot of people. So that doesn't mean it's perfect. I've also seen people like, when the big ayahuasca trend was heading on, I was speaking to a friend of mine who's like a big corporate recruiter for like, Fortune 500 companies. And he was telling me, he was like, they've lost like 12 like high functioning, high performing like CEOs who went on like the ayahuasca like trend, and they went on a ayahuasca thing for 2 weeks, and they came back and literally were just like, yeah, I'm just not interested in work anymore. I mean, these are like super high functioning people, just driven, motivated, like go-to people who just lost all interest whatsoever. So I'm not saying that's bad. Maybe they weren't loving their jobs or whatever it was, but they were people who were getting things done, and they just came back and they're like, yeah, just gonna go live in a tent for a couple of years and see what happens. And frankly, that's something I may do on my own. I don't think I need ayahuasca to do that. That's sort of what I love to do anyway. Ameridutch, I love Field Ethos magazine. Thank you. That's the outdoor, that's my little, passion project. One of the sort of many businesses I sort of do, and it's fun and takes up a lot of time for what I get out of it, but it's sort of cool to be able to pass on sort of that adventure lifestyle. It's sort of a unapologetic adventure lifestyle. It's, hunting, fishing, off-roading, all this kind of stuff, shooting, magazine. So if you haven't checked it out, go check out fieldethos.com. Just if you want, just download the email newsletter. I think you'll appreciate the writing. It's just, a quality thing. And if you want, order the magazine. It's a quarterly print journal, really high end. Cool gift for anyone that's in the outdoors. Again, you can check that out at fieldethos.com. What does President Trump plan to do to preserve our right of self-defense? They're taking it away in Virginia, for example. Yeah, I keep seeing the stuff in Virginia. I don't know exactly what's going on there, but, Second Amendment's the Second Amendment. That's federal. Some of these states have tried doing these things. Like I know New York did, some of the most aggressive stuff. And some of those things are getting overturned, but it's why you have to stay involved in elections. That's why you have to do it because, I don't want to get involved. I don't, get a bunch of activist liberal judges on the Supreme Court and there will be no Second Amendment, I can assure you. So, we have to stay involved in all of that. Maybe you guys set up at Hunt Expo in Salt Lake next year. I've been to the Hunt Expo in Salt Lake a bunch of times. I haven't gone in a little while because we end up doing, SHOT Show for the shooting side of things. We've done Dallas Safari Club and Safari Club International, on the hunting side, starting to get more in the fishing stuff. And then we do a lot on the other, whether it's spearfishing or overlanding or off-roading and dirt biking and all these kinds of things. So we got to start doing some of these things. The problem is I can't go to every one of the trade shows because it feels like there's one every weekend all spring. It doesn't work. So we just got to sort of pick and choose. But yeah, maybe that's a great show. Actually, I've had a lot of fun there. And that's a big one. Sharp 8. I'm so glad fentanyl deaths in the USA went down. Yeah, it's shocking what happens when you shut the border to people who are smuggling fentanyl. It's amazing what happens. Let's see. Have you read any of the Frank Herbert Dune books? I have not, actually, no. I haven't even seen the movie, actually, so are they good? If they're good, I'll have to check them out. They're good? Yeah. Well, one of the guys on the team here says they're good, so I may have to check them out. Let's see. Okay, now we're getting a little dirty in the chat. It's I mean, you guys are out of control. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's not wrong. I mean, Chad McDonald, fucking Canada. Yeah, Canada's a interesting place these days. It's pretty insane. Yeah, it's a good time for Shirley. Love the Mount Ops crew and everyone else down there. Yeah, I guess that's about the Utah Home Expo. Yeah, I know some of those guys. Good people. Good excuse to go see Evan Hafer from Black Rifle Coffee. He's a good buddy and a great dude. Sis 195 Don Jr. So cute. Thank you. I appreciate that. 2A isn't for self-defense. It's for community defense. I think it's for all defense. But yes, it's not limited to self-defense. I agree with that. I mean, if you look at the genesis of it, obviously it was designed to protect the republic and from tyrannical governments that you see in places like, I don't know, California. You know the guy that consulted on the Dune movies, Don? A friend of yours and Charlie's? Who's that? Fairway King? I don't know. I mean, I may know him, but I may just not have put two and two together. I'll have to check that out. You're so handsome. Thank you, Maria Fari. I appreciate that. I would say the Dune books are great. First version of the movie was great. The recent ones are not great, but certainly agree with warning about the dangers of thinking machines. All right, that's fair. Okay, so it's sort of a Orwellian type of theme. I may have to check them out. Yes, the new movies usually they get woked out, and once that's in there, it sort of ends up being total BS. Canada voted themselves into a living hell. That is true. Let's see. All right, well, guys, it's a little past 6, so we've been going for a little over an hour. I think I'm going to go get dinner, and I look forward to seeing you all on Thursday. Maybe we'll have some do a little bit more Q&A. I will try to check out the Dune books. I probably won't be able to read it by Thursday, but I'll definitely think about getting there, or at least watch, maybe watch the original movie and kind of get caught up with what's going on. So with that, guys, I just want to thank you all so much for tuning in. Remember, before you leave here, just like, share, subscribe. Okay, it's that easy. Just download the Rumble app so you don't miss this. Get it on your smart TV. You can literally put it on there. That way you can watch with the whole family. Check out our incredible sponsors down below and in the video description. Okay, those are the guys that keep the lights on. They allow us to get there. Check out those guys. It matters. If it's something that you need, utilize their service versus someone that hates you. That seems like common sense, but support those who share your values. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts. If you get your podcasts that way, or if you have friends that get their podcast that way, make sure you know about it. But again, hit that little like button. I see how many people are still going in the live chat, so hit the like button before you leave. I really appreciate it. So guys, as always, stay strong, stay informed, stay engaged, and always stay a little bit triggered. I'll talk to you guys all again on Thursday. Be good.